Okay, so these lectures on responsible AI was actually requested by the funding agency. Originally, we did not have this, and they stressed with all the changes taking place with artificial intelligence and the progress being made, we have to include this. Okay, because when we submitted first about a year ago, things like more than a year ago, ChatGPT, just very few people knew, not too many people knew. And suddenly it has taken the world by incredible surprise. So they asked us to include this, and I'm glad they did, because this is an area that's going to affect a lot of us in many ways, okay? And of course, today's focus is mostly responsible AI. That also includes, using AI securely, okay? So that's the topic today. And we will have two sessions today on lectures. One is on, I'm going to give you, overview of AI at 10,000 feet high, okay? In other words, not all the details, but whatever you can see as if you are flying in the plane, okay? And hopefully it's not a cloudy sky. And the other thing, we're going to talk a little bit about what are the legislations or regulations that are upcoming or just to come about in the field of AI to regulate AI. Because country after country is very worried about how it can be misused. And of course, there are a lot of benefits as well. Okay, so that will be there. And then third part is writing a policy for an enterprise, how to develop as well as apply AI responsibly, okay? So the session I will give you some of the principles you have to make sure where AI is used, should be used, the principles behind how AI should be used, and then you will write a sample policy, okay? So that would be the last session, which will be a tutorial. Okay, so let's start with this again. I doubt I'll make you an expert on AI in just one session, but I'm hoping that you'll have some basic idea. Okay. So first of all, some of you might be very used to programming. What is the main difference between programming and the AI or machine learning in particular? So in programming, what you do is you have a lot of data. You write specific programs to process the data. It could be a Java program, it could be a Python program, but basically you have some data, you have some functions you want to do, and you manipulate the data to achieve those functions, okay? So you basically write programs for that specific data or specific data sets of the type. In the machine learning, the paradigm is different. You have data, you have a lot of machine learning techniques, okay, such as neural network, SVM, decision tree, and so on and so forth. There's so many AI techniques or machine learning techniques. What you do is you apply, in this case again, the right machine learning technique to understand what the data is all about. It's sort of like coming up with understanding the patterns of the data, so that you can predict how next instance of the data will be, okay? Or sometimes it's a classification. You classify the data, for example, if somebody gives you a lot of data about the price of real estate in Chennai or Trichy, with the square foot bedrooms, total area, and then you have various price. And then next time when you have somebody says, I want to build a house of 2,000 square feet in a land of 4,000 square feet with the 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, or whatever, and what would the price should be. Okay, so that's the prediction. Those are the kind of things the AI can do. Of course, in this case, it's very simple, but in general, you have very complicated data. In the case of price, it's usually one, for the real estate, it's only 2 or 3 dimensions, like square feet, number of bathroom, okay. Whereas in the case of very complicated thing, there could be thousands of dimensions for the data. So humanly, it's not possible to construct what the pattern is. So machine learning essentially can understand data, millions of data points, and each one can have thousands of dimensions, okay? And then it will tell you what the pattern is. It will also tell you what some of the dimensions don't matter at all, okay? That's called dimensionality reduction, okay? So that is what AI is. So in the case of AI, you have a data at the center, and you have various already machine learning techniques developed. You try to understand what the data is so that you can predict, okay? Or you can even generate a new data of the type. So usually the prediction is what is called the classification AI. In the case of, where it can generate a data of a new type, of the same type but with the same properties as before, is called the generative AI. So the AI we are going to be worried about or going to be concerned about in this class is what's called generative AI, like ChatGPT. So it's not predictive AI, it's more generative AI. And that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to try to understand. Okay. So that's sort of a very quick overview of difference between artificial intelligence and regular programming. Some of you maybe, in fact, when I talked to a lot of you, you were so worried about even computer scientists, programmers, that you're going to lose your job tomorrow because there's no use for your thing. Not at all true. Because even if AI can help you write a new code or not even require you to write code, okay, chances are somebody who understands programming can better understand, better develop better machine learning algorithm, as well as whatever the system generated, especially in writing code by generative AI, it will still have a lot of bugs. You have to go and debug it. You have to go and modify it. So unless you understand programming very well, there is no way, not anybody on the street can use generative AI to write programs. So be assured, AI is it will be disruptive, but for most of you, you're going to have a beautiful career. Okay, so a lot of students ask me, what should I do? What you should do is do whatever you do plus learn some AI. Okay, so that's the way you should do. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to give you a 10,000 feet overview, which I already have started. Okay, so what is AI? Artificial intelligence. The word is artificial intelligence. It's the technology that enables computers to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, and increasingly AI doesn't have to be supervised, okay, or you don't need to be in the loop. Okay, that is one of the major progress lately. It can work for hours and come up with the right solution. Okay, now the important point is AI only simulates what you're trying to do, not necessarily do the same thing that we do. In fact, even today, AI doesn't quite understand what's happening. It simply looks for patterns and applies it. If you think AI really understands, not true. It simply looks for patterns. Okay, so it's a more simulation. The end result is it's looking for not exactly how you think, how we think. Okay, and today's AI machines, based on machine learning, can do speech recognition and image understanding. Okay, and for example, without image understanding, there will not be any self-driving cars that we see on the road today. I don't know, in India you have seen self-driving cars. In the US they're all over. They're putting in every street, every city street, see how it's doing. Okay, and of course for self-driving cars, they have to understand what other vehicles on the road. They have to understand pedestrians crossing. They have to understand stop sign, they have to understand yield sign, whatever. So the whole point is, if you cannot understand this, there's no way you can drive. Okay, I mean, the ability to understand patterns is just only one, but there are other things as well. So the important thing is it is real, as you can see in self-driving cars. And today's AI machine can understand and respond to human language. I hate the word understand. They don't really understand, but I think they pretend to understand and they can respond to human command. That's sort of a better way of putting it. Okay, so a breakthrough occurred in sort of a 2024 using a technology known as generative AI or Gen AI. Okay, so Gen AI essentially can create complex content, such as I said, why is it called generative AI? It's not predictive AI, it is generative AI. In other words, it can generate new sentences or new images or new something based on what he has seen, and because it says if I give you 4 sentences, most likely you would know what the 5th sentence might be, okay? And that is what AI does. The more sentences you have, the next sentence following that would be, you can guess more correctly, okay? So that's what AI does. So it generates rather than simply classifies. Okay, in fact, I'm going to show you a lot of examples how I interact with the ChatGPT to give you a feel for what generative AI can do. Gen AI can create complex content such as long form text, images, plans, realistic video, and etc. etc. Okay. Okay, so generative AI in turn makes use of technology known as deep learning. Okay, deep learning, what it means is several layers of what we call neural network. The neural network itself tries to simulate the cells in your brain. Again, we don't really know our brain works that way, but it can simulate a lot of the answers, making this neural network model of your brain. Okay. Okay, so we are not going to be talking about a lot of different, there are other types of AI, but we are going to only focus on generative AI and machine learning for this course, because that's where a lot of progress are being made. Okay. Any question on this? We'll give you more details. Okay, what is benefits of generative AI LLMs? Okay, now, okay, so LLM stands for large language models. Okay, so generative AI is broader than LLM. LLM language models usually means the text-based, okay, whereas it could be image-based, audio, whatever. Generative AI covers everything, whereas LLM is more text-oriented. Okay, so generative AI can perform a variety of tasks, including summarization. In fact, I'm going to take you through some examples, classification, question and answering, and so on. You'll be amazed when I prompt how the system responds. Okay, it can create a content like articles. In fact, I'm going to show you how I prompted ChatGPT to write a cybersecurity, software security article for me. Okay, and it can do personalized experience, analyze customer data to create personalized recommendation, such as how should I invest my money in the stock market. In other words, you give all the money you have, various places where you have invested. You can ask, okay, I'm 35 years old, I want to retire at 60, how should I invest my money? Okay, it will give you some answers, okay, based on today's market, prediction, and so on. That sort of is a personalized recommendation. I will show you one example if I have time. And then plan an event of course of action, organize writing a paper, etc. In fact, I asked ChatGPT, okay, plan a wedding for my daughter, okay, and I told the ChatGPT there's just $100,000 budget. Please go ahead and tell me how I should plan the wedding of my daughter, okay? Not that I followed it, but I think that's the idea, okay? And it went through, in order to do a wedding, you have to plan for the hall, you have to plan for the meals, you have to plan how to entertain people, blah, 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 and then said, okay, what is your budget for each, and that's what you should allocate, what city you want to do. I said Washington, D.C. Okay, Washington, D.C., you cannot do wedding less than 150,000, 200,000, so I upped my budget, and that's the way it went, okay? Okay, so large language models are a subset of generative AI. They work on data in the form of text, okay? And software code is included. So generative model is broad. It doesn't have to be text. It could be images and so on. Whereas a large language model, mostly text, and text also means software code, okay? Okay, the pitfalls of generative AI. Inaccurate information. Generative AI can produce information that appears factual, but is inaccurate, which is called AI hallucination. Why so? The reason is every step of the way, it is statistical in nature. In other words, it's a probability based. Okay, so if it's a probability based, it's going to make, even if something is 60%, it's going to recommend 60%, but in your case, it could be that 40% path. Okay, so hallucination is a part of AI. It's just nothing you can do because all the decisions are sort of statistical. And also it depends on the data. If I give a data, in fact, it's called bias. If I give data with 100 people, 90% of them men and 10% of women, and 90% of men, I make them engineers, and the 10% of women, I make only 50% engineers, because that's the usual normal, right? That's what you would think. And then what will happen is, in order to recommend who you should recommend, it will recommend a male, not a female, okay? So those are what's called bias, because the data you put in is going to be reflected on your answer. But if you make a decision on people, you could get into trouble, because you may be disqualifying a woman who is a good engineer or a good programmer, for example, okay? In fact, it has happened with Amazon. Lack of understanding. Gen AI model may seem to understand the content they generate, but they really don't, okay? Data quality. Okay, general, it can be difficult to collect and label enough high quality data to train AI models. So far we made all the advances mainly because there is so much internet data, news articles, papers, all kinds of things, and all the interactions. So there's enough data for, things like ChatGPT to understand at least English. Maybe it may not do very well with Arabic or even Tamil for that matter, okay? So that's the issue. Where do you find enough data? And the internet also gives us a lot of data for this training. Some of it is not, they didn't use copyrighted materials, so they're being sued. Okay, now we are going to go into a little bit the technology aspects of AI. Okay. Okay, so what is Gen AI technology? So Gen AI basically uses multi-level neural network or deep neural network. And what it does is it collects a lot of raw data, textual data or whatever, okay? And they're usually sequence data to generate extended sequences of content, such as words in sentences, shapes in an image, frames of a video, and so on, and software code. Okay, so the word transformer model is something, it's very technical, you don't have to really understand. Usually neural network one works on labeled data. Labeled data simply means, if this data is of this final type, this data is of this final type, okay? For example, I might say, if data looks like this, it's probably A. The data looks like this, it's probably B. If the data looks like probably C. When I say data, I mean the pixeled data of the character, of the letter, okay, in letter recognition. So Whereas most data, they are not labeled. Nobody knows exactly what it is. So transformer model first takes the very raw data, makes some labeled data, and then neural networks work very well on them. Okay, again, this is very technical detail. Unless you're a machine learning expert, you probably I don't know, but you hear the word transformer models, which simply means it can take raw data which are not labeled and can make a sense out of it. These models are essentially multi-layer neural network with billions of parameters, literally billions of parameters. Okay, what are parameters? Parameters are settings. Machine learning is to determine the value of those parameters for these data you have made it to train on. Okay, determining these parameters are computationally and time-wise very expensive. Okay, so for example, if I give you my original example, predicting the price of a house based on a lot of houses I have done, but a lot of house data I have, there are only four parameters: square feet of the total land, square feet of the house, and the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. You can also put it's a posh building, moderate building, not very posh. So we have 6 parameters, and then what you do is you fit a curve. The curve could be, for example, third degree polynomial, fourth degree polynomial. So if you have a third degree polynomial, essentially you need to compute four parameters for the thing, right? So that is parameters. Essentially, you are figuring out what is the curve that explains, that can capture the price of a house, okay? And the parameters that are essentially the parameters of that equation you are trying to fit that data to. So think of it, in this case, we are talking about, literally billions of parameters, literally billions of data, and we're trying to figure out what those parameters are, okay? And that is why they're computationally expensive, and that is what they're trying to do. Okay, so LLMs are basically trained on only vast volumes of data encompassing sources like books, articles, code, and so on. So what they can do in return, they can do text generation, language translation, content, and providing informative responses and queries. Okay, now what are some of the examples that you can see today? ChatGPT, OpenAI, which I have used a lot. Copilot, if you're using Microsoft, for example, if you're using Word, it will interfere you and saying, do you want to use Copilot? And of course, now, in the last 2 weeks or so, there is a, LLM by Chinese, okay? You might have heard about it, that is basically doing everything a lot cheaper, okay? Okay, so that's sort of both scary as well as encouraging, okay? And, okay, so anyway, these are some of the things. I should have added that Chinese model. I haven't played with it, so I don't know, so I didn't want to add it now, but it is there. Okay. Okay, now, yeah, are you guys okay? Okay, so what is deep neural network? So deep neural network, it simply means it has several layers. I only shown 3 hidden layers, 1 input layer, output layer, but in general, it could be hundreds, okay? Okay, now, why is it called a neural network? Okay, so, okay, let me see. That each one of this here is like a neuron in your brain, okay? And how does the brain work? At least how we think it works. So basically, the brain was a thing called the cells that are coming in called dendrites. They are input. And then the cell body is in the middle, and then it basically, it produces an output for the next cell, okay? So you can think of this dendrite as an input, and the model is artificial neuron. It combines them, and then an activation function which basically comes up with a function which parameterizes the input, and it is also various functions like a sigmoid function and so on. And then using the parameterized version of the input plus the function it uses various different kind of functions. Sigmoid is one of the common one, and it produces the output. So the bottom line is the more neurons you have and more they're connected in complex ways, there are a lot of these parameters you have to understand what those values are. And also you have to figure out what this activation function is. It could be simply linear, it could be sigmoid function, it could be some more complex function, okay? And the neural network, what it's trying to do is basically figure out what those activation functions are, what the parameters are at every layer, at every cell to produce what is the right one. The more data you have, more you train these parameters and all those things, they stabilize, they become more and more correct. So more data you have and more layers you have, you get the right parameterized version. Okay, so that is what basically what's happening. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you a few examples to show the power of generative AI, in this case LLM. So I will go through many of them, but not all of them. First, I asked ChatGPT just for the class if Dr. Janet wanted my bio. Okay, I asked ChatGPT generate my bio. Okay, all from the internet, what is available on the internet. Okay, the next one, the beginning of this year, I asked ChatGPT, okay, tell me what the economic outlook is. Okay, for both US and for India. Okay, and the third one, I asked ChatGPT, okay, help me write a paper on software security. Okay, essentially all these things called prompt engineering. You interact several times to extract what you want. Okay, and there are a lot of rules about prompting, and the more you use the thing, you know how to do it. And then, of course, as I said, I asked ChatGPT plan a wedding for my daughter, given this information. And then financial planning output. I told one of my clients has so much money, how should he invest? How should she invest? Okay, so we'll go through some of these things and see the kind of prompts you have, and then you will get a feel for how far the technology have come. Okay, I am not vouching for all the output. Okay, so I didn't, they are reasonable, but they are not perfect. So that's something you have to know. They are reasonable, they are not perfect, but it's always a good starting point. Okay, let's just go through a few of them. We have about another 25 minutes or so. I will just spend a few minutes on each one. Okay. So any question before we look at some of these session? Okay, so this is how I'm interacting with ChatGPT. Okay, I will read it aloud for you. Hello ChatGPT, could you help me write a bio of myself based on what you can find about me on the internet? Please list the sources you have consulted, because I want to know where it got the information from. Okay, the bio should be about 3/4 of a page. I also told them, don't write 5 pages, just write a small page, okay? And the ChatGPT says, I can help you craft a bio, but I don't have access to personal information about individuals unless they are public figures. And their details are readily available online. However, I can search for publicly available information about you and base the bio on what I find. Please confirm your name or any specific details you'd like me to include. So I tell ChatGPT my name is so-and-so, okay, and I want the bio to be professional, okay? I don't want it to list how many children I have, how many times I was married, so on and so forth. Okay, I just wanted to be my bio, okay? Or how many times I was dead, whatever the point was. Okay, okay. So then it says, immediately knew I have a PhD. Okay, so Dr. Balakrishnan Dasarathy is the distinguished academic and industry professional specializing in information assurance, cybersecurity, blah, blah, blah. He currently serves as the collegiate professor and program chair. Okay, so it just goes on, and I don't want to sell myself here, you all know me. Before joining UMC, worked in the industry for 3 decades, which is true, okay, of industry experience. In none of my bio resume, it says 3 decades, but he sort of figured out based on the data I have given. Its career includes significant role in telecommunication, in various couple of companies, and the financial industry, and so on. And he holds a doctorate. Dr. Darshan maintains an active presence in the research community and blah, 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 okay? So I asked them, this bio is very good. What are the sources that did you consult? I consulted publicly available sources to gather information for the bio. The primary source used the University of Maryland website where I work, which features a detailed profile of me. Additionally, I referred to ResearchGate. ResearchGate is a publication where a lot of researchers have other publications. Okay, so these are the ones I used. Okay, so my view is it got most of it right. Okay, in the past it never got a lot of right, but so if I'm really struggling to write my biography, this is a good place to start. Okay, and then you can modify it, add information or subtract information and all those things. Okay, so what I suggest is some of you may not have a lot of internet profile, but if you do, this is the right place to write one, or a right place to ask one to write your resume or bio.
So this means social media like LinkedIn were not consulted.
Yeah, because I served professional bio.
But LinkedIn has professional.
That's a good point. Yeah, LinkedIn is a professional bio. It didn't consult.
LinkedIn has protected your personal.
Yes, it should have consulted.
I'm thinking the other way. LinkedIn has respected your privacy information and they have not.
Yeah, I'm not sure I asked LinkedIn not to share. You're right, I could have. But LinkedIn, the whole idea is to share so that people will find you. Okay, so you're right, it didn't look into LinkedIn, okay? Maybe, maybe there are some restrictions how LinkedIn can be used. Okay, good point, very good point. Okay, so this is sort of, self-applied. Let me do the next one. Okay, 2025 economic outlook. Okay, let's do that. So I didn't want to sit here and do online. These are all, it's all done before.
So this was before Trump assumed office.
Sorry,
This was before Trump assumed office.
before,
Donald Trump assumed office. I'm saying things would have changed after he assumed office. Trump as a US president.
yeah,
So you took the generated before he became the president or not?
yeah, right. Okay, actually, yes and no. Before he became president, I generated in January. That means it knows it's going to be Trump. Okay, so it should have known, okay. So you're right, but I did generate it, I think sometime in January I did this, okay. So although we didn't have the new president by the time, but it had enough information to figure out Trump would be the president. Okay, again, I just want to go through this. I asked for the economic outlook of both. See, every year when I do my own plan, I try to read various materials, what the economy is going to look like. Not necessarily they're always right, but I consult 3 or 4 sources to know how to move my money from bond fund to stock fund, I do all these things once a year just to try to balance my thing. So I do always ask this type of thing, but usually I read some real newspapers and journals, economic journals. Okay, so here I ask, hello ChatGPT, I haven't communicated with you in a while, how are you? You know, I'm treating it as if it's a person, okay? Hello, it's great to hear from you again. I'm sure it doesn't know who I was, but it pretends. I am always here and ready to help. So I guess you could say I am doing well. How about you? What have been going on? Okay, most of it is sort of a noise. Okay. Then I asked today, I want to talk to you about 2025. Can you please tell me what the economic outlook for 2025 and explain to me your rationale as well? Okay. So, yes. Sorry? That's a good point. Because it knew I am coming from the US, because from my web address, it knew I must be from the US. Okay. I mean, that's easy for it to figure out which servers I'm reaching. It's easy for it to understand. Okay.
Generally, it will automatically give where you are located.
Say it again?
So you may ask about any country.
Yes, yes. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to follow this up. Okay.
You could have meant global, but it is assuming that you asked about US.
Which I was surprised. It sort of assumed I am only US, but it does say about a little bit about how it assumes all my money is in the US, which is not true. So it made that assumption, which it should not have. Yes, I'm not, again, I'm not justifying what he said was right, but I'm just giving you some idea how it went about. Okay. So as of January 2025, the economic outlook for the United States appears cautiously optimistic, with several key indicators suggesting moderate growth and stabilization. So it just goes into GDP growth, inflation. Inflation is still going to be a concern. Employment, labor market looks pretty good, 4.3. Monetary policy, basically it says the interest rate is going to be still elevated, which is sort of interesting because in January it was not clear whether interest rate will start coming down or start stabilize. Now they actually realized they're not going to bring it down. The chances are it's going to go up. So it did predict that, and then it takes into account global considerations. International factors including trade policies and economic conditions, major economies like China and the European US landscape. So you didn't know at the time all the tariff is going to be in place and all those things. It sort of assumed Trump will not make too many radical decisions, but obviously that may not be true. Okay. And then it tells you I am consulting IMF chief sees ready world growth in 2005, and Reuters city expects a rally in global stocks. So it gets some sources, okay. And then I say, what do you see the outlook for India? I specifically asked for India. As of January 2025, India's economic outlook presents a mixed picture, with the growth projections indicating the slowdown compared to previous years. Okay, it may be right, it may not be right. Okay, and GDP growth, it goes through private consumption. Overall, despite the overall slowdown, private consumption and government spending are expected to rise. Okay, and sectorial performance, it said agriculture output is going to increase, manufacturing, construction are projected to experience slower growth. Okay, again, we have to wait and see how true these are. Okay, market sentiment, financial institutions have adjusted their outlook accordingly. HSBC downgraded Indian stocks to neutral, neither buy nor sell. Okay, in summary, while India's economy is projected to continue growing in 2025, the pace is expected to be more moderate compared to recent years. Okay, and it gives you what all it consulted. UN predicts world economic growth subdued 2.5%. HSBC downgrades Indian stocks. India's Modi looks to new economic playbook as risk mount. Okay, so that is what it did. Okay, now, as you can see, I'm getting something out of it. Not necessarily they are correct, but if you don't have money to subscribe to expensive financial journals, you could use this as the basis, talk to your financial advisor, talk to your stockbroker, and then make a decision. See, so essentially, you have this, all this information. The power of information now is vast because of things like this. You shouldn't trust this completely, but it sort of helps you, because it pulls information from various places, and then it summarizes for you, and then you can decide. Again, you shouldn't trust all this, but it's a good place to start. Okay, so you may be interested in, okay, tell me where the jobs are for the next 2 years. I have this background. Where can I find jobs? Okay, try. Maybe they're all wrong, but at least if you're worried about jobs, where to apply for jobs, go abroad. You just want to put all this information about you, and then you have to prompt several times. So instead of asking me for advice yesterday, a lot of students I met, ChatGPT would have done a better job than I could have. Okay, so that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so that's one more. Okay, how much time we have? Okay, I'll go through maybe a couple more, and then we'll finish the session. Okay. You're all security people, right? So I'm going to ask you to write, help me write a security, plan a paper on a software security. I'm not asking you to write, but help me plan to write a paper. In fact, if you have a requirement for writing papers and things like this, you might want to start on this. Okay. Oh, upfront. By the way, the whole thing is what's called prompt engineering. You have to know how to ask ChatGPT to do the kind of things you can do. You can ask it to plan, expand, follow this following format, all kinds of things you can do, both output, how you should constrain the thing. So, for example, I said, please justify your answer, okay? So that means it has to give references. So there are a lot of ways in which you can interact. In fact, you can take a course on some of this called the prompt engineering. So they will, in order to interact with a lot of ways, you can get a lot out of it, okay? So you may want to master that, okay? Anyway, so I'm asking it, act as an outline expander, generate a bullet point outline based on the input I give you, and then ask me what bullet point that I should expand on. So I'm just giving a big overall directions, okay? And when you outline, please make sure the bullets are numbered using the pattern, okay? Why so? So that way I don't have to repeat the whole sentence. I can just point the bullet, just expand this. In fact, I'm going to do this. Create a new outline for the bullet point I select. In other words, I want to keep expanding more and more. At the end, ask me what bullet point to expand next. Ask me what to outline, okay? So up front, I told how I want you to do this whole session. So I told everything. And then, of course, ChatGPT says, of course, I'd be happy to help you with that. Please provide me with the initial input for the outline. Once I have that, I will generate the bullet point. In other words, it seems to understand my direction, my explanation. Okay, so then I tell ChatGPT, see, my prompt is on the right side, it prompts from the left. Okay, I tell, secure software development. That's the area I want to write a paper on. Okay, certainly, here is the bullet point for secure software development. Okay, principles for software, secure software development, secure coding practices, authentication and authorization, which is not quite part of secure software development. It just gives you this security testing. That makes sense, okay? Since I am a software person and a security person, I'm going to, ignore 3C. It's not relevant to writing a paper on software security. But anyway, and security in the development cycle. That makes a lot of sense. Not simply coding, but the entire cycle. And secure dependence and libraries. In other words, I have to make sure whatever C libraries or Python libraries, they're all secure because they're all developed by third parties. And respond to security incident, not sure that should be a part of a software development paper. And user education and awareness, perhaps. So nearly 3 or 4 out of 8 are right. The other 3 are not that relevant. Okay. Since I am a software person, I know this is a lot of it not I don't need, but at least it gave me, if I have a mental block writing, sometimes what you do is introduce ChatGPT, and then it will push you with some more details, and then you can expand upon it. See, often, a lot of us, at least me, go through mental block. I just can't think right now. But then you still have to produce some of the things. And I use it, and then by interacting with my mental block goes away. Okay. Okay. Now I am asking to expand 5E, code reviews with a security focus. Okay, so if you look at it, the 5E, it broke into 3 parts. Security in the development cycle, incorporating security from the design phase, code reviews with security focus, continuous integration and continued deployment. So it already came 5 with several sub areas, okay, which is very good. Actually, those are the things you worry about. Okay, then please let me know what bullet point you would expand. So I said, why don't you expand to me 5E2? Because remember I told you you should number all the bullets, and that's what he said. Okay, then it picked up, I know it's the code review interviews with security focus. So importance of security focus to code reviews, incorporating security code reviews in your development cycle, and so on, okay? So, in other words, what's happening is, it's helping me to expand the paper, okay? So once I have all these things, I can start writing the paper, right? That's the idea. Okay, common security review areas, anyway, balancing security and functionality, which is important. At the end of the day, if something doesn't work and it's still secure, who cares? So it has to do its job. Okay, and then it keeps asking me what bullet point would you like to expand next, please provide. Okay, now I'm asking, give me steps to write a paper on secure software based on the outlines you have already given me. Make sure you include steps such as researching, previous work done, references, etc. Okay, so it says, go and do the research preparation, review previous work. I mean, as if I didn't know, but then at least I have to think through this. And then it provides you the paper, introduction, that should be one section, principles and practice, another section, secure coding practice, principles and practices, okay, security measures and development, which is good, user education, incident response, which I don't think is the right one. Anyway, the last section should be a conclusion, summary of the key points. So whenever you write, make sure you summarize your paper and then future direction, how you should go. This is normally what you put in the concluding remark. So, and the cite sources, and then make sure you proofread it and review, let it proofread by somebody else. Okay. Okay, from now on, whenever you output text or outline, generate a set of facts that are contained in the output. In other words, make sure they're all true. Okay. And certainly, like segment 7, it goes on and on. Okay, so anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is not go through all these details, but it helps you write a paper. Okay, if you want to prompt right way, it could set you up to write a good paper. But again, at the end of the day, you are the one who should say whether it's relevant, whether these are the right details, but it's starting you on the right line, okay? Okay, so anyway, so far we have looked at 3. We have now 3 minutes left. I can definitely do one more or just leave it at this point, ask you questions. So we will finish the section on time. The 2 others, essentially I was playing with this. My daughter was married 10 years ago. I don't need that, okay? But I just want to see what it comes with, whether it knows Washington, D.C. very well enough to tell me what to do, okay? And the financial planning output again, I pretended as an investment manager. I asked it to what to do. Okay, that's what it did. Okay, so the main thing I'm trying to tell you in the session is how far machine learning and generative AI, how far they have come. And this is the way of life. You have to use it or you'll be better off in your work, because when your company asks you to put together some plan, you may not know where to start. You just put this in, at least to get going. Chances are your very company-specific information is not on the internet. Thank God it's not into the internet. So it may not give you for your specific company. So, which is both good and bad, which means you cannot write something based on your specific company data. It's all based on the internet data. But on the other hand, it will sort of tell you, based on the general data, how you could form something for your own company, okay? So there are a lot of creative ways of using all the generative AI, okay? You can for a lot of classes or coursework, you can develop your class notes for using ChatGPT, because a lot of information is on the internet. And that's the way you start. You can do personal life, you can do professional life, and you should try whenever. If you are a student and you are trying to get grades, you have to identify yourself that you use the ChatGPT the following way. Okay, that way it's not plagiarism. Okay, so the people in the university still don't know how they can advise students to make use of these technologies. Okay, in some sense, what is happening is you might think students are not thinking anymore. You are not allowing them to do, for example, writing paper on their own. But that's the way it is. Okay, so it's like asking not to check with the Google. Okay, or not use calculator. You can't tell people go back and do everything long arithmetic on the paper sheet. They will use calculator. They will use Google. Now you have to use this. So the real issue is for teachers, since here's a university, how to guide students to use it properly. Okay, but then, but if they use it correctly, they are improving the productivity. Okay, and hopefully they're better papers. So that is that's the session. So I just want to give you a feel for generative AI based on machine learning. Again, I could not have gone through in the start session real machine learning example, okay? But I did explain a little bit about house prices and things like this. That's a start. Okay, so that is where we are in terms of the technology. And this afternoon, we'll really talk about what is responsible AI means, and we'll go from there. Do you have any questions? Because we are just coming to the end of the session. I will be happy to take 1 or 2 questions. Are you first of all impressed with ChatGPT? I just want to see what your reaction is. Are you overwhelmed? Are you pleasantly surprised? Have you used it yourself? So where are you coming from in the spectrum? Are you bothered that you are going to become useless with all this technology? You must have some reaction.
Sir, it is more of a philosophical question, not a technical question.
Yes.
That, yes, the same point you were saying at the end, that what according to you is like chat GPT doing? Is it making us dumb as a generation or smarter as a generation?
Good question. I don't know. But on the other hand, I believe every generation we are producing people who are smarter than before. In fact, I don't want to compete with today's student, to be honest, okay? Or for that matter, my children or my grandchildren, okay? I mean, they are getting smarter. So I am of the view they are not getting smarter. They're becoming a little bit lazier. But yes, that's possible. But then they may improve productivity, okay? So, you know, what would you like to see your children? To be lazy is okay as long as they are productive, right? I don't know, as long as they make more money.
It's more of a philosophical question.
More of philosophy, no, I agree. But I think I was very worried when I first used the slide rule when I was a 18-year-old engineering student. I thought I would forget all the arithmetic by hand, okay? Slide rule, right? And then calculator, everybody said, kids are not going to know how to multiply.
Sir,
But-
actually kids don't know how to multiply. If I'll ask anyone like, can you add 67 plus 12? Everybody will use the calculator even for basic numbers like 67 plus 50.
Yeah.
How much is 67 plus 50? They'll use the calculator, they'll not use the
No, I agree.
calculators to
I think it is not actually doing calculation by hand. What doing calculation by hand does for you is give a feel for the numbers. What does it mean to add two-digit number? Why is it become of three-digit number? Okay, so that's for us. When you do a lot of things by hand, what it does for you is to give you feel for what it means. Okay, it is possible kids are losing it, but on the other hand, the more they do using calculator, they multiply two digits, it becomes 4-digit. Okay, they get it. I think it's a repetition, how you do it. That's what it is. If they do 10 times using calculator, multiply two digits numbers, it's 4-digit, then they understand, okay, 2 to the power, 10 to the power of 2, multiple 10 to the power of 2 is 10 to the power of 4. So essentially it's a 4-digit number. I think, somehow, I think there is the intuition still can be developed with all the technology. But can you go back? Probably not, okay? Most likely not. No, I totally agree. I think, there are people who will always resist. It's like saying, with all the cars, people are getting fatter. That's true. People aren't walking. But the best thing is then you get all these exercise facilities, you go there and burn your calories. There's a way in which we live, okay? And for example, I go to the gym every morning, okay? So I think I'm sure my grandfather walked to the paddy fields when he was, okay? That's why he was healthy. But the point is we find ways to compensate for things that we don't have. And I am a big believer in technology. At the end of the day, the only way your kids are going to be better than you are is to rely on this. So for me, I am an optimist. Since you're asking me philosophically, I believe everything should be done. Everything should be used. Okay, that's sort of my feeling. Yeah.
From the point he said, I think it's just fastens the process of the technology. Say a calculator, it would have taken decades to reach the point where we are at now without a calculator. Say integration or differentiation, that's not the more important part in any making it. Without the invention of calculator, we would have everything if we done by hand, it would have taken 50 more years to reach the point where we are at now.
But then again, my question, what where are we right now? Do you think are we in the right position?
Yeah, there will be a stumble where any new technology comes, but as he said, when the calculator was invented, everyone thought there would be no calculation. We don't have to do any calculation. But right now we are using a calculator in our exams. Then also we have so much work to do, right? So it will we will figure out, and we can do more human work than the machine work.
No, I agree. I think, we are doing a lot more because we have a calculator. Okay, for example, how many of you would have calculated mortgage, how much you have to pay out a loan you think about 10 years ago using long math? You would not have done it. Now you do a lot of those things. If somebody tells you you have to pay 8% for buying your automobile for next 5 years, immediately you can calculate it. You can say, okay, I have to pay 3,500 rupees every month for the loan I'm getting. Okay, now my total, this is the money my home is making. Can I afford it? All these things in your fingertip. Okay, and also you don't have to trust the salesman. I mean, you know what you can afford. Okay, so those are the benefits you have. Okay, and you would not have had it in the past. You have to go back and look at some big tables. For 1,000 rupees for 8% interest rate, how much you have to pay. Then if you're borrowing 50,000 rupees, you have to multiply that by 50, all those things. Now you can do everything in a minute in a calculator, okay? So, I mean, our life is more complicated. We do more things, we use more things. That also means use of more technology, okay? So, anyway, good question. I don't have an answer for all of that. But basically, I am a believer in technology. I also, I'm more worried about with all these things. We are also going to be destroying ourselves in some fashion, not because of technology, but it could be misused. Things like nuclear power and all those things. That's a slightly different story, but civilization often come to a point where they destroy themselves. But anyway, that's a different story. Okay. Thank you.